Dr. Darish and YouTube Live. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's Friday night. We are here with our special guest, Reginald Williams of Marginalized Voice. We're going to interview him and talk to him and let him tell us a little bit about himself. But before we get started, make sure you check in, let us know how your week has been. Um, my week went by pretty fast, busy clients. Everybody knows I have about 4 or 5 jobs. So they call me a Jamaican or something, some whatever that. And so, hey Angela, how are you? How are you? Hey Tanil, they're coming in. Y'all, I'm not gonna tell y'all what I did just a second ago. Reginald's not gonna tell y'all either, but I'll tell y'all. I thought we were live and we were not. So how are y'all tonight? And Tanil says hey. And see Reginald right there, you'll see where I put the if they have questions, that's where it's going to be.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. Angela. So we have some good stuff tonight. And we will get started at 8:40 like normal, giving everybody a chance to come in. Um, Angela, you say you're good. You're happy that it's the weekend. Yes. Yes, me too. Reginald, how was your week so far? How was your week total?
Busy, busy. We actually, as I stated, we moved from Bowie to Maryland. We moved from Bowie to Laurel, and we were in the midst of the move. And so, moving is a tough thing, man.
I
And then,
just did that. I just
yeah,
moved. I moved from one condo to the next, and
uh-huh.
I could tell that I'm older because it took like 2 weeks to recover.
It's amazing, and I can say this, and she won't get mad. My wife,
Uh-huh.
Angela and Tennille, my wife has a whole lot of stuff, bro. Just a whole lot, just for no reason, So like, hey, look, my stuff is packed and ready to go in a minute, and we spent 2 weeks moving her stuff.
Oh, she gonna get you out.
Uh, hey, look, 21 years, man. I haven't said anything she ain't heard. She
Oh,
heard
so
it
she
all.
she good.
She
21
she
years.
good. She good.
Yeah.
She good. She good. A lot of stuff and always late. Them the two things, man.
Hmm.
The- So right, I should call in here just now, but she good. That's my baby, Peachy Pleasance. That's her real name. Her
Okay. You
Peachy's
said
her.
Peachy Pleasant.
That is her birth certificate real name. Peachy's her first name, and Pleasance is her maiden name.
Hmm. Okay.
And she has a pretty pleasant spirit, except for when she's nagging me.
Okay. And my sister just doing. Hey, Donna. Donna lives in Maryland.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's up there, Crab Night? And then Crab, Maryland crabs. That's the reason why I say
Uh
that.
huh.
I don't even know what our state bird or state animal is. All I know is we known for crabs.
Crabs. Yeah. Blue
Yeah.
crabs, right? Is it
Blue
blue
crab,
crabs?
blue
Yeah.
crabs, blue
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
crabs, blue crabs. I stopped eating that a long time ago.
Really?
Yeah.
No
Veg-
meat.
no meat. Vegetarian for well, it's funny, right? Because in September, I've always had anxiety, and I know this on your book trial, talking about, but it just got worse, generalized anxiety, and
Yep.
but I had been eating. I've been a vegetarian for 20 years, or at least I thought I was. Really, what I was a carbohydratarian because I ate more carbs than
That's
veggies.
that's my
Yeah,
problem. That's
yeah,
why
yeah.
with because I don't want to I don't eat like beef, pork, and now I've
Mhm,
cut out chicken and
mhm,
I eat fish now, but yeah, that's starting
mhm.
to get kind of.
Yeah.
But I noticed when I was doing it, I was eating more carbs and
Hmm.
gaining more weight.
Game right. So yeah, I switched. So as of September of 2021, seriously, I am truly a vegetarian, and probably right around. I had been trying to be vegan. I couldn't give up cheese though, but
That's the thing.
probably
Yes.
right shortly after then, I stopped eating cheese and everything. So every now and then I might have a piece of fish, a piece of
Okay.
salmon if the wife cooks it. But I'm pretty much vegan now, and just trying to. especially with the carbs and the anxiety, man, and the sugar and how sugar, exacerbates the anxiety, man. And like I said, it was the first time in my life I couldn't control it, or
Wow.
it was out of
Yep.
control for a minute. So
Yes.
everything I could do to kind of get control of it. So if that meant stop eating those carbs and eating those sugars, that's what I did. And I've actually, after I finally, started kind of changing the diet and doing that, and just understanding what was going on with me, I've been pretty cool. So I get up
Good.
every day, meditate, stay in my
Good.
word, stay praying, right? Because I don't want to go back to that space.
It's horrible. People don't realize they think anxiety is just being nervous.
Yeah,
It's a whole nother other side of that.
yeah. And then for me, I get the and I hear this,
Hey
Reg,
Pat.
hey Reg, you the strong guy, the guy who gets stuff done. I said, the only problem with strong people, man, is nobody never sees their pain.
Yep.
You know,
They think you're
so
good all the
yeah,
time
all the
because
time, yeah,
hmm
so I tell and it's funny because like coming out of that thing, man, it's like God suddenly connected me to people who's like, yo, man, Raj, I'm struggling with this anxiety. Yo, Raj, I'm struggling with this depression. It's like, yo, that was like he put me through this so I could understand this at a level that I had never understood it before. So I can at least have conversations with people about it, man.
hmm
But
hmm
the one thing I'm just trying to tell everybody, man, at first, if you can start changing your diet, man, you can start changing how you feel,
Yeah.
you
Cause
know.
see, mine was caffeine. Caffeine
Mhm.
would trigger my anxiety. Like it would
Okay.
just send me over the edge. And I noticed if I don't drink it, which I know I had to cut coffee out, all of that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cause it was
Yeah.
my trigger. It would,
Yeah.
I'm claustrophobic, but if I can get on elevators, but if I drink coffee,
Mhm.
nope.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you got to know what exacerbates your system, man. You got to
Yep.
know. And again, like I tell people in terms of our diets, right? When you bring up coffee, but coffee or aspirin or alcohol
Yep.
or these things, they change the complex of how you operate. So that means if you're putting bad stuff into your system, you're gonna
Get
feel
bad
bad.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm even now I get outside and I walk on the grass barefooted for a little while, man, just to
Yeah, because that's supposed to
be,
do something, right? To
yeah,
your
reconnect you to the earth, man. And and when we moved into the new place, my wife was like, which way do you want to put the bed? And so I always heard, I never did it before, or I don't know if I did it before, but
it's like the
I
feng
made
shui
yeah,
thing.
I made
Yeah.
sure that our heads were, I think, as our heads were south and our feet are west. I mean north. So yeah, our heads are south and our
Head
feet
south.
head south, feet north. So
I
that's
need to
how we
remember that.
yeah, that's how we sleep now. So
Okay.
yeah, so I mean, at some point I know my wife is thinking, man, this dude is getting real weird now. But
They
you
don't
know,
know when you get
yeah,
anxiety.
yeah,
Oh
yeah,
my gosh, the
yeah,
real anxiety.
yeah, yeah.
So, well, welcome everybody. I see people coming on. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank y'all for joining in. Let me know how your week has been. Oh, it is time for us to get started. So we're gonna let author Reginald Williams tell us about his book. If you have questions, just send them and I will post them on the screen. Just give us a little bit about yourself, Reginald, and then how you guys started writing first of all, and then we'll get into the
Wow.
the book.
Okay. All right. Well, I always tell now I'm a New York born baby, but I was raised in North Carolina. Um, in the '60s. I'm 62.
Okay.
Um,
Wow. Okay.
and and growing up in a small community, I didn't recognize that. And at the time growing up, I didn't recognize that materially we were poor. And the reason why I didn't recognize that materially we were poor because spiritually we were rich. You know,
Mm.
and you saw how the community came together, the matriarchs and the patriarchs, how they always had their hands on everything, the youth and everything that happened. And so my greatest inspirations was my maternal grandmother and my mother's mother and my paternal grandfather, my father's father. And like
Okay.
those are the individuals, man, that just impacted everything in terms of who I am. You being a therapist, I always say to people, just in general,
Mhm.
that my grandfather is the greatest therapist that I ever know, and he only had a sixth grade education. So then the
Wow.
question becomes, well, how does a man with a sixth grade education, how does he get the title of being a therapist? I said because he had a therapeutic spirit. he had a therapeutic ear, and he had a therapeutic word for people that always came to people wouldn't do things unless they had a conversation with Mr. Casey. And
Mm.
so growing up, I wanted to be like probably most black boys. I wanted to play NBA basketball, and I had a pretty vicious basketball game. I got a college scholarship to play basketball, and didn't get drafted, but ended up in some pro camps and things of that nature. But as it would be, I didn't make it, and
Mhm.
that was like one of the greatest things that ever happened to me, because I believe had I made it, I wouldn't be in this field. And so the field is behavioral health.
Okay.
And so long story short, I ended up being in behavioral health, working not exclusively, but primarily with men of color. And I started out working with men of color, or men. And the reason why I chose men is because everybody else is working with youth. This person was working with youth, and that person was working with youth. And I said, well, who's working with the men? And probably a year and a half, 2 years into doing this work with men, with grown men, I
Mhm.
realized that chronologically they were adults, but emotionally they were still children. And so subsequently, I had been working with children rather than men. And I always tell this one story.
Mhm.
I was on a radio program, just probably back in 2016, and we had gotten through one segment, commercial break, coming to the second segment, and somewhere in the halfway point of that segment, they started taking callers. And this one gentleman called up, and he was really emotional, and he says, "I'm 63 years old, and I've been
Mhm.
waiting all my life to hear what you just said." And I'm like, wow, I'm blown, because like, one, I don't know what I said that made him emotional, but what I got out of it was this man had to wait 63 years to be affirmed by a stranger. And that just
Wow.
shows you just how impactful men will go through, anybody, but again, because my clientele is men, how men will go through their entire life and not be confirmed. And
Mhm.
so I've said that, I never found out if that man was married. I never found out if he had kids. But let's say, for instance, he was married and his wife said he was a phenomenal husband. And let's say, for instance, his kids said he was a phenomenal father. I
Mhm.
submit to you, he couldn't be the best husband and he couldn't be the best father that he can be, because he had not yet affirmed who he was.
He was,
He was
right.
still waiting for that. And so, you know, this work was kind of like a Damascus Road experience for me, because again, I wanted to play NBA basketball, and I never knew that I was gonna be in this field. And so then once I got into the field, and I started out in volunteering, but once I got
Mhm.
into the field, I went back to school and got some additional education to support it, and then realized, and this kind of conversation we had before, I felt like for me to be the best counselor or advocate, that I could be, I really had to be educated by the clientele rather than by what a system says that I needed to be.
Exactly.
And so
Cuz
that's kind
that's
of how, yeah, go
mhm.
ahead.
That's where you get your knowledge from when you working with your clients
hmm
actually. Yeah.
I this thing I always say, man. You have to allow your client to talk long enough that they can come up with their own solution. You're trying to ask the right questions and guide them in a way to make them think in a way that they never thought before. And that's what I got from my grandfather. Because when I started to think back of my grandfather and the people who would come listen to him, I never heard him say, "Well, you know what? I think you should do this." He
And
was
you
always just asking these questions. And that's what he did to me as a kid. I say something and I ask a question. He would ask me a question. Then I would say something. He would ask me another question. I'm like, why we keep going through this? But it's like I said, his son, my father, told me that I was supposed to think, but my grandfather taught me how to think.
how to think. Mhm.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
see, that's the first thing we learned in our master's program is that, first of all, we don't give advice. We just
Mhm.
help the client come up with different perspectives of whatever they're going through. And then I always tell my clients this every time is that you have the answer within yourself. I'm only here to help you kind of bring it out. But
Outright. Yep.
you have that answer. And that's for everybody that's on this show tonight. If you're going through some problem, the thing is you have that solution. You just have to sit there and process it and talk it out until you come to that conclusion. So how many books do you have?
So let me back up.
Okay.
I was a part of an anthology, and then this particular book, right? So
Okay.
let me back up to get into the writing
You
thing.
go right ahead.
Um, Back in, I guess, maybe the late '90s, I ran a music production company. Like, I'm all over the map in terms of stuff I've done, right? And so I wanted to be considered a professional, not a professional. I wanted to be considered an expert in the field of music, right? Because you get a lot of people. How do I get in the music business? People not understand that the music business is 90% business and 10% music, and so you just
Mm.
having a hot track is not enough. And so I understood the business of music. I understood how contracts were formed, and I understood
Mhm.
how deals were made. So in order to do that, I said, you know what? Let me write an article because once some like it's like you hear now once you see it on the Google is once you Google it, it's got to be true because it's on Google or it's on the internet. So
Uh-huh.
my thought process back then was if I can get this published in the paper, people automatically think me to be
Think
an
it's true.
expert.
Think it's
Yeah,
yeah.
just because it's in the paper.
Right.
So I ended up writing 6 articles on the business of music that got published. That ended up getting me a freelance job with a music magazine out in California. And then when I moved to DC to get married,
Mhm.
I took on a job with a newspaper called the Washington Afro American Newspaper, which is the oldest weekly African American paper in the country.
Okay.
It's had writers like Langston Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston on there, in there as writers. And
Wow.
so I began, just doing the field work, covering community stuff, eventually Capitol Hill, sports, ended up doing Hollywood stuff. Then became the entertainment editor, the managing editor, and I began to freelance and all that stuff. And then I was in journalism for about 10 years before transitioning into behavioral health. But then going into behavioral health, my writing turned into answering RFPs, writing curriculums, and things of that nature. So I had a wide grasp of writing,
Okay.
and people kept asking me when I was going to write a book, and I would always say never, because I never had any intentions to be a book. And even as an author now, I don't claim myself to be an author because my book is not about me being an author. It's about me trying to move a message, which is a message for
Same
Black
here.
boys. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? So it's
same
not
here.
about me being the author. And so so again, and I got to divert really quick. I was on a radio. I was on another television pro. No, the other one was radio. I was on a television program
Mhm.
with Dick Gregory,
Okay.
and first I'm in awe because like you get to sit next to somebody like that. Like that's like only a dream come true.
Exactly.
So I'm sitting there next to Dick Gregory, and it's just he and I, and we're on the show, and during the commercial break he turns to me and he says, young man, you need to write a book. And I was blown away. But again, at that point in time, my mind still hadn't
Was it?
focused on what am I going to write about. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And so I just remember that as being a seed, that was kind of planted in me, and I didn't know it. And so to get to your question about my books, I have that one book right now that's
Okay.
published. I do have another book. I haven't published it yet,
Okay.
but it's that one book, A Marginalized Voice. Um, and like I said, I do have another one, but it's not. I'm actually working on another project that with 12 mothers. We're going to
Okay.
put that book out before I publish the other book.
The other book.
So
Okay.
yeah, so
So
I have
tell
one
us.
problem. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So tell us how a marginalized voice is set up. The structure of it. Is it? Well, go ahead.
No,
Uh,
it's what I did was so y'all like stories. So I'm gonna keep telling stories. So I
we do
wrote the
like
first
stories.
I wrote the first 4 chapters, and I really did not know that it was a book. It was more me getting out these feelings that I
Mhm.
was having working with these men and these boys. And like it was
Okay.
like I was full and I just needed to get it out, right? Like as a therapist, man, you sit down and you listen to people's problems. Sometimes you don't get to process your own, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so at that point in time, I wasn't seeing a therapist or anything of that nature. So I just had all these stories and these experiences and going to jail with cats and seeing them, get sentenced or going to jail to pick them up. And I just had this stuff in me and I needed to get it out. So I wrote like 4 chapters. And I guess at some level I knew it was a book because they were chapters.
Mhm.
But I took it and after I finished those 4 chapters, I took it and I put it in a bag and I put it under the desk, and it sat there at least 2.5, 3 years,
Oh
with
wow.
no intentions of ever going back to it because I'd already
Mhm.
gotten it out.
Mhm.
And at the time, I was running a program called Cure Violence, where you deal with gang violence. And every other month, we would have a nationwide meeting with all these advocates for gang violence or against gang violence. And on this particular call, there was a white licensed social worker, white woman, mid
Mhm.
50s, and she's getting ready to tell us about black boys. And in my implicit bias, I said, there is nothing that this white woman can tell me about a black boy. I am
Mhm.
black. I once was a boy. I work with boys all the time. There's nothing that she can tell me. Well, Lord knows that woman broke some stuff down that I ain't never heard of, man, and just took me on a whole nother level. Like, yo,
Really?
don't say that no more, Reggie. So anyway, she almost became my inspiration for, for finishing the book. She
Mhm.
used this one word, iatrogenic. And I remember iatrogenic, what does that mean?
I saw
And
that in
yeah,
your
yeah,
mhm.
right. She said it, and I said, I got didn't know how to spell it. I said, well, let me sound this. My wife as a teacher said, let me sound this thing out, man. So I wrote it down, and
Iatrogenic.
I
Mhm.
went and looked it up, man, and I was amazed at the meaning of it. And I found out in black boys' life, or not just black boys, because let me say this to the callers, because most of the calls on here are women, as far as I can see.
Yep,
I
most
say
of
in
them
my
are.
introduction that black boys are not the only population of people who are marginalized. Black women, black girls, LGBTQ, immigrants, uh,
Mhm.
people in poverty. There's a whole bunch of groups that are marginalized, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
However, my thought process is, and it's just my thought process, black boys are the only population of people who don't have a national voice. So whether you're talking about, if you're talking about black girls or black women, it's the black girl magic or black girl
Mhm.
rocks. You know, if you're talking about immigrants or you're talking about the LGBTQ community, you have people in Congress. There's some level of a national voice for every other marginalized group, and I just felt like there wasn't one for young black boys, and I was hoping I could start that conversation, right? And I
Mhm.
said all that to forget what my point was, but anyway, so when I finished the book, I wrote the book chapter wise to respond to the people who had some level of a iatrogenic behavior towards black boys. And so I
Okay.
started out. I love. I started.
I had to put that up there in
Yeah,
case
yeah,
everybody's out there
yeah.
like, "What?"
So I started out by saying,
Thank you, Angela.
the first chapter was thank you, Angela. The first chapter, I said, welcome nowhere, because as black boys, we feel like we can't go nowhere and be welcome. We really can't even be welcome in our own hood, because how many times I've spoken with young black boys, and this young boy wanted to be a photographer or wanted to be a phlebotomist or whatever, but he couldn't say that in his hood because he would look soft. And
Yeah, that
and
mhm.
he would want to, like, I would want to say it to you, but I don't want to say it to you because I would look soft, and then you would want to be something. You won't want to say it to me because you would look soft, and so we're walking around worrying about being soft rather than expressing who we really are. And
Right.
so the first chapter was Welcome Nowhere. The second
Mhm.
chapter was entitled Trapped.
Trapped.
And that's
Okay.
because we find ourselves trapped in a lot of situations, going to school and and forgetting our lunch money is a trap, because I tell a
Mhm.
story about that in there. Thank you, Pat. I go to the third chapter and I call
Superhero.
superhero, and
Uh-huh.
that's a chapter that I wrote towards fathers, because fathers who are present always feel like they have to have this superhero presence for their sons. And what's really more important is not for you to be their superhero, but for you to help them to find a superhero from within, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so I talk about that. Sometimes you have to sit back and allow your children, and this is for parents in general. You got to allow your children to educate you about who they are, because every child is unique, and we must understand the uniqueness of each child.
Do
And I
you
think
think
some.
do you
Go
think
ahead.
black parents allow their children to have a voice?
Um, I know I didn't feel that. I felt like I didn't have a voice. I know
Right.
that for a fact, and I think that a lot of a lot of black parents, because of some what the world we live in, you can't do this, you can't do this, because if you do, this might happen, that might
Happen.
happen,
Right.
and you
Right.
create this fear system. And I do understand that, we do live under some different circumstances, but sometimes, I think more often than not, um, they do not allow their children to have voices. Now I got three kids, and I thought, and I still think I was a great parent, right? But
Okay.
my kids have sat me down and said, "Yo, Dad, you effed up in some places," and I
Mm-hmm.
had to embrace that. I had to embrace that conversation. And some parents are not willing to have that conversation or willing to listen to that, because all they want to talk about is what they did, what they did, what they did. And then, so
Right.
that's just my thought. I might get some pushback, but that is it, right?
And
And
any
so,
questions, y'all? Y'all can
yeah,
y'all can chime away.
you know, they
Yeah.
Dave Chappelle said, and I wish I can remember the quote verbatimly, but
Mm-hmm.
Dave Chappelle says his role as a parent was not to be an authority figure, but to be more of a reference guide, something to that nature, you know.
Okay.
And yeah, look. I have a young lady who I used to go to church with. I went to attend the same church I went to, and she was a partner in an engineering firm in DC.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I ask questions, man, like, yo, what made you become an engineer? And she said when she was a kid, she used to tear things up, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, like, how did your moms handle that?
I was
She
great.
would take me, she would take me to the pawn shop to get stuff so I can tear it up. So, in other
Oh.
words, she fed her curiosity rather than say, "Girl, stop tearing my stuff up."
Yep.
And so, how often do we have that situation? Girl, you better stop tearing that stuff. I even tell you a better story. I tell you a better story. Years ago, this is before I got married.
Mm-hmm.
I was here in DC. I was in a hotel. And you remember back then, I don't know if they still do it, the Embassy Suite used to give you breakfast in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And so I came down late for breakfast, and it was just me and this white man. And both of us needed something that wasn't present on the table.
Mm-hmm.
And both of us basically at the same time took off looking for some help. And so we're walking in step. And I don't know if he realized it, but I realized kind of like we're doing the same thing. When we got to the door said employees only. He kept going. I stopped because
Why did
all
you?
I could, because hey, boy, you're violating their space. And I
Gotcha.
recognize that you're absolutely right. You're right. It says employees only. I realize I'm not an employee, so I'm going to honor what has been said. But at the same time, I can't be mad at that white dude because he went to get what he needed to
He
have,
needed to. Yep.
and sometimes we don't do that.
And
You
that's
know,
what we call entitlement.
mm-hmm.
But I think we need to make our kids be entitled, because
Entitled. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
because we hinder them because we're always putting those strict rules on Johnny. Don't do this. Don't do stand in. Don't
Mm-hmm.
let them
Mm-hmm.
be free to roam. And I know
Well,
some of these moms probably gonna say no, but that example that you just gave is a prime example of you didn't get what you needed because you stopped at that employee sign.
that stopped at the sign, right? And it was just like it was an invisible chain that just said, "Beep," you know, and I can again, I didn't necessarily do the wrong thing because in that situation I should have stopped because it said employees only.
Exactly.
But
Yeah, yeah,
what
yeah.
but there are some other situations where there probably wasn't a sign where I stopped because it's like don't do that, and
Right.
we have to again we have to allow them to be who they are because God created each and every one of us uniquely, and it
Hmm.
becomes our responsibility and we are educators as parents, it's our responsibility to get out of them what's in them, not for us to put in them what's in us, if
Mm.
that makes any sense.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Because sometimes what's in us is fear,
yeah,
and then your child is being held back because they're in so much fear before they even get started in life. So Karen
mm-hmm.
says we must understand the uniqueness of each child. Amen. That is deep. And I guess she was addressing what
Yeah,
you said
yeah.
previously.
I mean, it's how can you? again, going back to, this, the whole title of Marginalized Voice, how can you uniquely be who you are, or you're marginalized if you're not allowed to be uniquely who you are, right?
Right.
And so when I go back to, as a matter of fact, her name was the young lady I was talking about, the engineer. Her name was Karen, right?
Okay.
When
Okay.
I began to think about her mother having the foresight to not say stop tearing up my stuff, but go to the pawn shop and buy stuff so she can tear it up, right? Because she wanted to know how these things work. And now, from a little girl tearing up toasters, or a little girl tearing up clocks and trying to put them back together, she becomes an engineer, and she not just an engineer, but a partner in an engineering firm in DC, right?
Wow.
And so you have to then go back and applaud her mother for that foresight. And sometimes, as parents, we're doing the best that we can, but sometimes we are instilling fear in them,
Fear.
you know,
Yeah.
you know.
Cause
So
don't touch that. Don't break that. Cause that's
mhm,
gonna. And I'm gonna have to buy a new one.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, then, I quickly go into the other chapters. Chapter
Okay.
4, I call "Sever the Cord,"
Sever the cord. Mm-hmm.
and I'm talking to mothers, right? And I'm saying that, especially with young boys, right? I say a little bit more vulgar when it's in classroom setting,
Uh
but
huh.
sometimes, man, even as grown adults, man, their sons are still connected to the umbilical cord, and that stunts their growth, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so my thing is, you got to sever the cord, but what you want to do is create a wireless connection. And so that's how I kind of end the chapter, right? Because as long if you don't cut a child from the umbilical cord, they're eventually going to die. Well, I don't know if you're going to die, but it's not healthy,
It's not healthy, right?
and so you have to learn how to do that, and sometimes it's tough for mothers to do. And I always share the story between my wife and I, and our youngest,
Mm-hmm.
um, which is a girl. She was playing high school soccer, and she was on the other end of the soccer field, and she gets knocked down, and she seems to be a little dazed.
Wobbly and dazed. Uh
Yeah,
huh.
and on the other end, there are adults, including grown men, who are jeering at her, right? And so, the dad in me wants to get up and snatch somebody, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I sit there and I'm real cool. But my wife, who does not get upset at anything, she jumps up and she's gonna run down there because she's gonna protect her baby. And I
Mm-hmm.
say, "No, baby, sit down." What you mean? I said, "No, baby, sit down." Right? So she sits down, but she's agitated with them. Now she's agitated with me because I didn't go down there and Will Smith somebody, right?
Uh huh.
And so she said, "Well, why would you disallow that to happen?" I said, "Baby," I said, "in life, she gonna get knocked down.
Yeah.
In life, she gonna be dazed. In life, if she doesn't learn how to get up from that now, she'll never learn that lesson. Let her learn that lesson, you know."
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes with mothers and sons, it's hard for them to let them learn that lesson. What I say, cut them off the umbilical cord, or stop allowing them to suck your breasts. That's
Mm-hmm.
kind of how I say in the
Mm-hmm.
class.
Mm-hmm.
But what you want to do is create a wireless connection.
Yeah.
And so that's
Cause I had a professor in my first year of grad school. She said when her kids would be running outside, if they would fall down and skin their knee or whatever, she would tell them, "What you coming back in the house for? You all right? Why are you?" Because she said she didn't want to coddle them and make them, because like you said with your daughter, you're gonna fall down sometimes.
hmm
So Pat says, "I totally agree. I grew up in fear because my mother transmitted that into her children." Yes.
and they don't realize it. My wife one time, just to show you, and he didn't even know he was doing this because he didn't know that he did this. Um, Her grandfather, who died when he was 99 years old, had his right mind and everything, but he was in the hospital one time, and
Mhm.
we were in the hospital, and she was wheeling him somewhere. And just like I told you the hotel story, she went to go somewhere in the hospital, and you can look on his face like you ain't supposed to go there, you
Mhm.
know. And
Mhm.
and I said, Peachy, did you see that? She said, I did. And parents do not realize that I understand the protection. Like, first of all, I say You can't protect your children. People need to get outside of that thought process. You
Mhm.
prepare them, right?
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
can't. There's some things you can, but most things you cannot protect them from, right? When a mother or a father tells a son, when the police stop you, you do this, 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 and this. You're preparing them because you can't protect them at that very moment because you're not there,
Exactly.
right?
Right.
And
Right.
so a lot of times, if you grew up in a particular era with particular things that happen in that era, and it's on
Mhm.
your psyche, right?
Mhm.
Then you transmit that to your kids, and we have to be able to get outside of that. So, and like she is so right. And to Angela's point, Dr. Kevin Jackson, I have him in the book, is quoting his saying, sometimes you have to watch your kids fall down
Mhm.
and keep your hands in your pockets and
Yep.
do nothing, although you can do something. You
Yep.
know, yeah,
Kind of like
yeah,
that message that my
yeah.
professor, she said she'd leave her kids, they'll be
And go,
crying. It's like,
yeah,
no, go
yeah,
back out there, you okay? And
right.
Pat says, my mother was always yelling at us.
And,
And Angela says, my grandmother taught me some wonderful lessons on being strong and independent, compassionate
passionate.
person.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Independence is key.
yeah, yeah. So as long as we learn how to then work interdependently in a situation, right?
True.
So and
True.
sometimes, man, that space of being by yourself that's depressing. That could be depressing in itself, the
Mhm.
isolations, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's the one lesson that marriage taught me, right?
Mhm.
Because actually my first two kids were out of wedlock, and I
Previous.
was
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
and I was a custodial parent, right?
Mhm.
And so when I met my wife, got my own house, got my own business. I don't raise two kids, man. I got a little bit of money in the bank, right? I don't really need to get married for nothing. But inside of my marriage, I understood, or I learned the lesson of I should not be living my life in isolation.
Wow.
So as independent as I was, I had to learn to be interdependent. You
I'm
know,
working on that
yeah,
now as an
yeah,
adult
yeah.
because I just read a study where it says our nervous systems don't work properly if we don't have human contact
That's
with
right.
each other.
That's right. And we were talking. I don't know if this was before the show actually started, but in my anxiety, well, I'm introverted, right?
Uh-huh.
And so
Mhm.
for me, it's easy to come inside and chill. Well, I found out in dealing with my anxiety now, I'm trying to get out, man, and touch and hug and be around people because it does something for my central
It
nervous
helps.
system. Yeah,
Yep. Yep.
So yeah, absolutely.
Isn't that crazy how your body does things if
Mhm.
it doesn't get what it needs?
Needs exactly
Yeah.
right. Yeah. So that was the fourth chapter. The fifth chapter I think the fifth chapter is
Incarcerated
incarcerated
teacher
teaching,
teaching.
teaching,
Yeah. Mhm.
right? The reason why I call it that is because, and my wife is an educator, right? We are not in an educational system. We are in a doctrinational system, right?
Okay.
It is I, as a teacher, am giving you this what is it, lesson plan that I put together, and I need for you to parrot back what I gave you. And if you can parrot it back to me, then we'll pass you. But
Mhm.
you may have some inherent genius, and you may be able to come up with this answer, and you may not be able to explain to me how you came up with it. But because you can't explain to me, I'm going to fail you. And so this whole system of education. Malcolm X says only a fool will allow his enemies to teach his children. you know
Mm.
and
Mhm.
and so when you begin to look at the school system, it has nothing to do with education. It has everything to do with indoctrination. And again, as I said about parents, a good teacher is someone who will try to find out what's in a child and bring it out of them, because the
Out of
true
them.
meaning of education is to lead out,
Uh-huh.
and that's
Uh-huh.
not what happens. So education is I spend a lot of time around teachers. I do professional development, so excuse my
Okay.
language, I'm in their ass a little bit.
But
you
you know
know
what? That same professor that I taught, she would not give us. She always said she didn't really want to give us a grade because she
hmm
said that's not what it's about. She wanted you to learn the material, know the material. She was just really awesome.
hmm
As you can tell, I liked my grad program.
and that's cool. That's really good. Look, Karen is it's the dichotomy of a parent who feeds curiosity and then the people who is incarcerate curiosity and how
Mhm.
they clash each other. Because her parents say, "Yo, go out here and explore," right? But
Mhm.
then the people
Mhm.
outside of that, they're uppity, you know. And like she says, most teachers are not encouraging because I start out incarceration teacher talking about a kid who um, he said that he knew that his ancestors were the creators of science, math, and all these things. And he also said that one of his problems in school was he played too much. And the
Mm.
question I always wondered is, did he play too much in school? This is his own admission. Did he play too much in school because he was a part of a school system that did not feed his curiosity?
Mm.
You know, because
But I've
it,
seen that.
mhm,
So bored. I seen this one little. I was a teacher's aide years and years and years ago. He would fall asleep
mhm,
because he would answer everything and just be bored and then be knocked out and then get in trouble because he sleep. But I'm like,
exactly,
he has
exactly.
nothing else. You're not
You know,
you're not inspiring his curiosity.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
So you were addressing Karen's question, her statement. My siblings and I are blessed. Our parents told us we could do and be anything. They fed our curiosities and talents. People outside our family thought we were uppity, and most teachers weren't encouraging. Wow.
that is the truth. That is the truth. I had a teacher, and she recently died, Miss Johnson.
Mhm.
Miss Johnson was so connected to us intimately. Miss Johnson taught my mother,
Mhm.
my father,
Mhm.
and all of my mother's brothers and sisters, and it was 12 of them, and half of my father's brothers and sisters. So when I came along, Miss Johnson was like, "Yo, you can't fail, right? Not here,
Yep.
not under my watch." And so Miss Johnson was always encouraging. And I just told the story this weekend because I was home this weekend.
Uh-huh.
I had thought Miss Johnson had. This is a couple years back. I thought Miss Johnson had died, and my cousin posted a picture of Miss Johnson at a high school graduation talking to a little black boy, and it looked just like the whole thing reminded me of me.
Of yourself.
I went
Uh-huh.
home next week to see Miss Johnson. I said, "She's still
Oh,
living. I'm going to see Miss Johnson." You
right.
know, and so, and then I'll give you another story. I had a right before COVID shut everything down. I was a keynote speaker in my hometown,
Mhm.
and I done spoke everywhere, but now I'm back home. So
Mhm.
I'm nervous enough about that. But I'm sitting in the auditorium, and my classmate, I already knew my classmate was there because we had dinner the night before. My classmate comes in and he's trying to get my attention. And I'm looking at him and he's like, "Look, look." And he wants me to
Mhm.
look at the man sitting next to him. And when I look at the man sitting next to him, is Mr. Brown, my history teacher. And I broke out crying right there on the spot, right?
Mhm.
Because for Mr. Brown to come back to hear his hard-headed student give a keynote was the
Ultimate.
ultimate
Yeah.
thing, right? And I
Mhm.
really didn't know after seeing Mr. Brown whether or not I was going to be able to do this speech, man, because I was so emotional. But we had a conversation afterwards. He said, "Boy, you was hard-headed, man, but you was a good student." So that's what I'm saying. They were those teachers were so encouraging, man, and they taught us that they educated us. They inspired us, man. And I'm telling
Mhm.
you, this is not what is happening today, right? It's not what's happening today.
Right. Okay, let's read some. Angela says, "I'm sorry, guys. Coffee gives me energy." Well, caffeine doesn't impact everybody the same way, Angela.
Right.
So you can keep drinking your coffee. Hey, Kelly. And then Karen says, "When you have teachers who think you can't be an engineer and don't support your dream, my brother and I both wanted to be engineers. It was confusing. Our teachers didn't believe in black kids." Oh, that's a strong statement. Um,
Before you go, let me tell you,
okay, go
my
ahead.
my, my
Go ahead.
youngest my youngest daughter, she her teacher is saying that they're going to put her in this slow class because they felt
Uh-huh.
like she wasn't keeping up, right? And so we
Mhm.
go in there like, "Yo, I don't know who you're talking about, but that ain't our daughter," right? And
Mhm.
anyway, we we like, no, she's not. You're not moving her to no slow class. So anyway, Jade, she reads like I don't like. You should see her room
Okay.
and all the books that she reads. But top when she graduated from high school, she was number 12 out of 700 students. But I'm just saying, they're quick to say what you ain't,
Right.
right? And what they're really saying is because they are not parenting the teacher and what the teacher thinks is the right way, then they're not validated, right? When
Mm,
when in reality they are. This is the thing I say to kids all the time, right? And I try to implore this on them, right? You were created a masterpiece. Do not live your life as a carbon copy.
mm.
And that's what the system wants from us, for our kids to just live in this carbon copy world and to parrot whatever they say to be right. And we have to begin to have our own voices and create our own narratives.
Right. And don't allow that one teacher to put your child in that box and then you just leave your child in that box.
That's right.
That's
That's right.
just one opinion.
That's right.
Let's see what else we got. Okay, so that was Karen's. Then Angela says, "My family and teachers told me that I could do and be whatever I wanted. The only person that could stop me is me." Yes.
Where did Angela grow up?
She's from New York, I believe, Angela, right?
Wow, that's interesting.
And she Angela, correct me if I'm wrong. You're from yep, New York, Harlem.
That's well, maybe because of Harlem, because I guess I don't know how old Angela is, but there's more of a cultural thing, back in Harlem before it became, because I don't even know what the name of Harlem is now. It's now got some new name.
Oh, it's not Harlem anymore?
Certain parts of
Oh.
they've renamed it,
Oh.
So going to Harlem was always a treat, because it was you going to a place where people look like you. you know.
Angela said they're all about the children.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and Marissa, she says, "My son used to get in trouble for talking and bothering other students because he was bored." Yep, I've seen that before. After having him tested, we realized he was smarter than the average bear. He wasn't being challenged. Yep. So you
Hmm.
have to advocate for your children and not just allow, like I was saying earlier, allowing one teacher to say, this is, your child has a problem.
I'm trying to push my wife to my wife is a Montessori teacher, and
Mm-hmm.
Montessori has a wonderful curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
She has 3, 4, and 5 year olds, but I'm trying to get her to at the very least, if not stop teaching, become an advocate to teach
Mm,
parents how to advocate for their children,
their
especially
children.
um, and I've actually seen her do that, because of COVID and watching her work from home. I see, a couple of times I had to pull her up, like, not what you did to so and so, and she takes it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I've
Mm-hmm.
also seen her advocate for children, and I just think that's something that she should do.
And I think that's a needed role everywhere.
Hmm.
Like, because some parents think that because that teacher is the authority figure in in the situation, that they are the end all of everything, and it's not. You know.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Okay, let's
Yep.
see what we got. So besides advocating for him at school, we had to challenge him at home too. We have to work as a team. It takes both teachers and parents to educate our children and prepare them for success. Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's a daunting job. I mean, it's I my youngest is 27. Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
I don't even know what it like. I'm watching. I'm a granddad now. I'm watching my son with his 2 year old, and he was like, "Yo, Dad, you got to give me some advice in terms of raising Junior." And I
Mhm.
tell you honestly, man, it's like I didn't even know what to say because the world that these kids live in now and the
That's totally
challenges that they
different.
have is different, man. It's
Yeah.
different, but it definitely takes a a collaborative effort, between educators, administrators as well as
Mm-hmm.
parents, and parents do have to go in there and let them. Hey, look, I will if I need to grab you around the neck, and I'm just talking, not literally, but
I know.
I
I got you.
will. But at the same time, you're just not going to be disrespectful to my child,
Exactly.
and you need to find out what is unique. Look, a doctor, if a patient breaks their arm, a doctor resets the arm, right?
Mm-hmm.
The only reason that he can reset the arm is because he knows what the arm is supposed to look like in its original form, right?
Right.
And so,
Right.
as educators, if you do not understand who your clients are or your students are, and you don't understand the dynamics of what they go through, if you are a teacher in a
Mm-hmm.
Title I school, not knowing or understanding that daddy may be absent and that mama may be working three jobs and that this kid had to get up and get his sister or his brother prepared for school before he got to school and he's hungry. You have to teach from that paradigm. And I tell teachers all the time,
Yep.
I understand that you started out to become or you became an educator because you wanted to help kids or you wanted to educate kids. But the role of today's world is that there's got to be some social emotional
I
understanding in there
understand.
in order for you to be that educator. Because if
Right.
you don't, you are cheating them. You're cheating them.
And then all you're going to see is a problem child, but the problems are stemmed from maybe they're hungry. That's why they can't pay attention to math
Yes,
first thing in the morning because I need food to function.
I have a
Yeah.
poem. I have a poem in there that says, oh God, I should have my book with me. It talks about just because I didn't have a pencil or something. It's on the back of the incarcerated teacher. I
Hmm.
would love for you to read that poem. And there's a brother from Atlanta, it's an educator from Atlanta who wrote that. Oh,
Okay.
hold
Yeah, I
on.
don't have it. I
You
just
don't have
have
okay.
I have
It,
notes that I wrote.
but but anyway, it talks about all the things that he had to do to get to school. They
Mm,
didn't have any lights on because his mother wasn't able to pay the bill. His mother wasn't home because she had to work a third job, had to get up and do his sister's hair, had to fix his sister breakfast, and he had to do all these things. And he got to school, and his teacher was arguing at him because he didn't have a pencil.
wow.
You know, it's
And if
like
she only knew all the stuff
all
he
the
went through
thing
to just
to
get,
get. Yep,
wow.
yep, yep, yep. So it's crazy. Dr. Sanders. And to Karen's point, when you start talking about black kids, they couldn't be doctors, engineers, or whatever. Let me push that out a little bit, right? I just read a study maybe a month, 6 weeks ago
Hmm.
that first of all, black men die at a rate far greater than anyone else. We live on average 70 years,
70.
and
Hmm.
while everyone else is 78 and up, right? But they said that black men do better when they have black doctors, right?
Hmm.
And so, because the black doctors ask more relevant, intimate questions to find out what's going. Like for instance, I have a Jamaican doctor, Dr. Leach, Dr. Katie Leach. She want to know how work's going. She want to know how my wife is doing. She want to know and you get in there. You got to wait. But the reason why you got to wait is because with each patient, man,
She's taking
she's having a conversation.
it's what we call in therapy, you build rapport with your
You
client
build
so that
exactly,
so you
exactly.
know who you're dealing with,
Yeah, I
all
have a
aspects of it.
all
Hmm.
ask. I have a friend who was damn near on his deathbed. He calls me up, says, "I need. Hey, can you refer me to a doctor?" I referred him to Dr. Leach. Dr. Leach basically saved his life, and he says,
Wow.
I know when I go in there, I'm gonna spend 2 hours, but that woman saved my life. You know, and that's what you got to do. And when you tell a kid at a young age you can't be a doctor, then what happens is when he gets older, there are no doctors. It's gonna, because again, we, black men and I'm sure black women, because let me give you another statistic. I can't remember the exact numbers,
Hmm.
but there's somewhere between 600 and 900 women who die every year from a
Childbirth.
childbirth, and
Hmm.
60% of those deaths are preventable. And most of those deaths, 3 to 4 times, Black women died 3 to 4 times more than anyone else. And also the study said that Black women who graduate from college and have good insurance die at a rate greater than a white woman who graduated from high school and don't have such great insurance, right? And so
So
so that just tells you the level of care that we're getting from these doctors. So we need these Black doctors. So what happens is when you got teachers telling Black kids that they can't be doctor, it has a long bearing effect on us as Black people.
wow. Wow. And on that note, I heard a few Zumba students probably a few weeks ago talking about how they had black doctors and how that's who they look for
Mm-hmm.
treatment. And the
Mm-hmm.
same thing with therapists. I just came out of a training last week, and we were in a training that was how trauma impacts the black identity or whatever. But what we noticed, it was all black therapists in the room, and very few white therapists, and then we were like, y'all are the ones that actually needed to be in here so they
Mm-hmm.
can learn how to
Mm-hmm.
work with black clients if you get them, because it's a totally different approach that needs to happen. So we
Yeah.
got here. Is Marissa Daniel? You're not Marissa that was here last week? I just want to make sure that I didn't ignore you. The author from last week. I don't think that's her, but Angela says very informative. Okay, so the rest of your chapters,
What where did I stop? I started with, so then I go into
then
motivational. What
yeah,
is it? Motivate.
motivation. What's your follow up?
Yeah. So here's what happens, and it pisses me off. You have well intended men who come in to have conversations with young Black boys,
Hmm.
and there's this motivation that they're spitting out. And I said, you can't motivate these Black boys out of their predicament, right?
Right.
Even if you have the ability to motivate them in that moment, when they leave here, they got to go back to a situation, right?
Exactly.
And that
Yeah.
motivation is not going to last beyond the time that, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And so what I also find is that, and again, this may be unintended. I'm not saying this is maliciously done,
Hmm.
but it's almost like they're building their speaking resume on the pain of Black boys' trauma. And
Mm.
I don't like that, right?
Right.
A lot of times people will ask me for video of my work. I said, you're not going to find it because there's never going to be a camera in a room where I'm having a conversation with a Black boy because it is not for them. It's not meant for them to have all that on film, on footage, so everybody can see it. And so I asked one person, motivational speaker. I said, when you go to the doctor and the doctor tells you to disrobe, are there cameras in that room?
Nope.
No. So why would you do this? Right? You're doing this to build your resume on the back of their pain.
There's pain.
And
Right.
and, and so if all you're doing is motivating and there's no follow-up, then all you're doing is pimping these young boys
Yep.
and trying to call it, prophecy or trying to
Prophecy.
call it
Hmm.
help. So
Well,
yeah.
thank you, Angela. I know you got to go. Have fun on your weekend.
Okay.
And so, if anybody wants to purchase the book, I have the um, address online. I mean, on the screen right now. So
Good.
let's get through. What we got. Next one is program pimps.
Um, Program Pimps is so there are some great programs out there, right? But a lot of programs are what I call employment agencies, right? So if I have a program and say they give me a couple $1 million to run this program, first of all, almost 80 to 87% of that $1 million is going to go to just running the program. And it has nothing to do with money invested into the client themselves.
Hmm.
And so a lot of times what happens is it's an employment agency. I get this money, I have money to rent a building and to buy equipment, to pay staff, and who gets the short end of it? It's the client. And usually what happens is this. I'll put the client through a 16-week program.
Mm-hmm.
give them a certificate, said that they passed the class, and then I can put on my progress report, my qualitative, quantitative report to the feds. They
That.
passed the class.
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, that client who you just went through a 16-week course, they need stuff that's far more greater than 16 weeks. And I understand that as a program, you may not provide this other thing, but as a program manager, you should recognize, okay, I'm fulfilling this portion of it, but I'm going to encourage them to then go to this program over here afterwards, so I can help with the holistic,
The whole
the
approach.
whole
Yeah.
person, right? But
Mm-hmm.
that's not what happens. Is as long as
Right.
I can say that you're successful and I can give those programmatic reports back to the feds, so I can get a re-up, they're just
And I'm
pimps.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
it's
good. I'm
Pimps.
good. I'm not really doing a whole lot of work. And then the programs that are really doing the real impactful work, they're dying trying to get money, right? Nobody is funding them. They're sending out grants, they're whatever, but and they have the empirical evidence that
On
says they're
data.
doing it,
Right. Right.
but yet and still, and since you said data, right? I had 3 editors for the book. My
Uh-huh.
first editor was like, "Yo, it's a great book, man, but you need to have some empirical data in there." And so I said to them, "So are you telling me the voices of these black boys that have in this book is not
It's
empirical
not
data?
data. And it
I,
is.
I need to have data from a doctor or something." Nah, man, we only listening to the voices of these black boys. That's why the book is called A Marginalized Voice, right? Because nobody's listening to them. So I don't need to have the study that said that or the study that said this. I want you to study or listen to the study of the
The
voices of these
actual.
young black boys. That's all we need to hear.
Even the editor was trying to steal the voice.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Somebody, by the way, who I know is a fighter for. He's kind of he's revolutionary. That's why he became the first editor, and I was
Okay.
surprised by that comment coming from him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Treadmill therapy.
So again, so as a therapist, so we already had this conversation. I
Uh-huh.
love therapy is like I tell people all the time, right? So I have a black mechanic, I have a black HVAC,
Uh-huh.
black barber, black doctor, black dentist,
Uh-huh.
you know, and and these are in my Rolodex. I think everybody should have a therapist in their Rolodex, right? It,
Yes.
it, it, it should be mandatory, right?
I
And
agree.
so I am very big on therapy. My problem is with therapists, and again, a lot of the therapists do not understand their clients or even understand the conditions in which they come from. And let me say this, let me just go out on the table and say this. Even with some of our therapists of color,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the trauma that they come from,
They
they haven't really unpacked that trauma. And
right.
so in their therapy, they're not really as sufficient as they could be, right? And so what happens is for a lot of kids, they'll go to therapy, they will not, they do not create, there's no building rapport as we talked about earlier. So they spend those 45 minutes and they leave, and the therapist bills whatever Medicaid or
Uh-huh.
whatever it
Uh-huh.
is, and it's
Uh-huh.
this
It's
treadmill
this
approach,
cycle. Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that it's in that trauma, it's in that chapter where
Mm-hmm.
I talk about PTSD,
Okay.
and I say in that chapter that young black boys do not suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder.
We
They do
just
not.
talked about this at a conference last week I was in.
So let me tell you what they do suffer from: persistent stress, persistent traumatic stress disorder, because they never get to leave the
Right.
trauma that they deal with, right? And a
Right.
lot, and I think a lot of times therapists don't understand that, right?
Well, we
Like,
just talked about this the therapist that we were in
mhm.
the sessions that we were in, because black boys get diagnosed with a lot of stuff because the therapist, usually the white therapist or even the black therapist, doesn't understand the situation and where the little child has came from.
and,
So
and look, and this again, this is just me being me. I'm just like, so you either going to pull out the
DSM.
DSM-5
Hmm.
and see something close to that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
that's it.
yeah, this is close enough to that right there, and boom, and this is how I can build. So again, I love great programs. I love great teachers. I love great therapists, but I am challenging the systems because as a whole, these systems are not doing anything but continuing the hurt and pain
To
of our
her.
young black
Right.
boys.
Right.
Uh,
No, and I hope all therapists that are listening to this or replaying this will take heed.
mhm.
The least of these and the beginning are the last two.
So the least of these I had to go at the church. And actually my first editor was like, yo, you didn't say, and the first editor, let me
Hey,
tell you
Michelle. Sorry, go ahead.
his background is former pastor. His undergrad and one of his masters was in journalism. So great writer, great revolutionary, and a powerful speaker from the pulpit.
Hmm.
Uh, I think he was too revolutionary, and that just in the country, it don't always mix. But
Right.
anyway,
Right. Hmm.
he said there's no way that you can publish this book without having a chapter on the church. And so basically, as I said, right, if as a church, if God says or Jesus says, you did because you did for the least of these, if there are not programs that
Hmm.
exist in the church to speak to issues that black
And
boys are affected by, then
uh-huh.
there is a problem, right? We're talking about organizations that have primarily male leadership that are black, right?
Hmm.
And so if you don't have situations or programs, or you're not pulling people out of your congregation to build stuff, and I'm not talking about for them to get more people to join the church.
Church.
I
Right.
don't care. It's because I always say this: if you treat them the way Jesus treated the least of these,
Hmm.
they'll come to church on their own.
Right.
You don't have to do anything to get them to come to church, right? You don't you Matter of fact, people say, well, I'm gonna pray for them, right? Well, you don't have to pray for them. Just do the work. And
Do the
so,
work.
I just look in. I was given a good bit of money to do a program
Hmm.
around youth and youth violence, but I had to use the money with churches. Do you know I
Oh,
had to get you had you know I had to give that money back?
why?
I
Because
I couldn't get I couldn't get it. I couldn't get a church, not a church, to buy into it. Not one
wow.
church. And let me say this for those who don't know, and I'm only saying this because that's what they say. I live in Prince George's County, Maryland. They say Prince George's County, Maryland is the wealthiest
I
African
heard
American
that.
county in the
Hmm.
country.
Hmm.
And so here I live in this wealthy county. I have this money that I can use to help young black boys who are in dangerous situations, and I can't get one church. So
Did they give a reason why not?
man, let me tell you, you go through so much BS, man. And here's the funny thing, right?
Hmm.
When it was getting not one church, Karen, when it was getting close to time that the grant was up, I just basically hit him back and said, look, man, I just got to send you the money back.
Hmm.
I happen to have a friend who works within that agency,
Hmm.
right? I don't even know if he knew I had this grant. But one day I got a call from him. He said, this is like I had like 3, maybe 4 weeks left on the grant. He says, Reggie, I just heard something. Don't give this money back. You got to find some way to spend this money. If you give this money back, it's going to hurt you down the road. I was like, bruh, I've been trying to do this for the last year and a half.
That is
I can't. I'm done. Whatever happens to me happens to me.
wow.
So I gave him the money back. I gave him the money back. And there was one particular, I probably shouldn't say this, but there's one particular pastor in that group that had a
Hmm.
reputation of working with youth and with troubled youth. And I mean, I sat down with the brother, had lunch with the brother, had dinner with the brother, and I got I, all kinds of nonsense, all
Do
kinds
you
of
think it was
nonsense.
a crab in the barrel syndrome type thing?
I it's let me I don't know because check this out, right?
Hmm.
And I can be petty sometimes.
Okay.
So so I was doing I had a little bit of money that I can do some I can do some, it's not PSAs. I could do something with the radio station. I can't remember what it's called right now.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so I called up this one particular pastor who has a reputation of working with the youth, the one who I've had dinner with and had lunch with, and said, this is what we can do. And who said, yeah, we can do this. And every time I try to call him and get him to do it, it didn't
It
happen.
wouldn't.
So I
Okay.
called and said, hey, yo, look, man, I got this radio thing I'm getting ready to do, and I really need to have a pastor come on there and speak to these issues. I was wondering if you can do it. Yeah, brother, what time? What time I need to be there?
Uh-huh.
Like, oh, okay, okay. You can do the radio thing, but
For
you can't do
notoriety,
you
yeah,
can't do the
for
work, right? So I don't know what it is, and I'm just at this point in my life, I'm not afraid to call it out,
yeah.
right? And again, I grew up in a small community.
Mhm.
We didn't have a park, we didn't have a community center, we didn't have any of those things. But the one thing that we had was the church, and we had the elders, the matriarchs and the patriarchs from church, and they were our everything. And
Mhm.
because we didn't have a basketball court, they decided to put a basketball court on the church parking lot. And we had people who would come 30, 40, 50 miles away to play basketball at our church parking lot. I grew up with that. And so that, as a grown man, I expect to see in church today.
In
And
church.
I'm just telling you, I didn't see it when I was trying to do this, and I had to give this money back.
Oh, I could tell you that, yeah. I think the churches, they avoid things that seem too complex,
Yeah,
or they don't wanna address, or if the
yeah,
money is not there.
yeah.
But
So
yeah.
yeah, so I don't know what it is, but it's an issue. And again, there are some things that we don't. I mean, yeah, it would be. I always say that we do need money to do things, but sometimes we just need, what to say, your talent and your time.
Yep.
Sometimes we just need your talent and your time,
And the
right?
time.
And I give you a prime example. I did a book signing
Mhm.
on April 11th, and
Oh,
they had
just
a
recently.
just recently in
Okay.
Baltimore, and they had an audio engineer in there who was doing a recording for the book signing because somebody came from Dallas
Mhm.
to stream it. Right, this is the favor of God, right? Because I don't even know these people, but I got a call. I heard that you're doing this. We want to come stream it. We got 300 subscribers. We want to stream this because this type of stuff that we need to have on our platform.
Mhm.
And the audio engineer, he knew an audio engineer in Baltimore, so he called him up and said, "Can you come down there and do the recording for the streaming?" Long story short, after the book signing was over, um, the audio engineer came to me and said, "Hey, can I give you a call tomorrow?" I was like, "Sure," right? Because I'm that kind of dude. He
Mhm.
calls me up. He says, "Man, I love audio engineering. I want to teach young black boys how to do this." Right? We sat down. We had a conversation. He and I together have written a curriculum to teach black boys how to do audio engineering. He's doing the audio engineering side of it. I'm doing the cognitive side of it, and we're putting them together. And I've already had meetings with the Department of Juvenile Justice, and we're taking that system to them. And neither one of us are getting paid to do this. I didn't get paid. We didn't get paid to write the curriculum. We're not getting paid to do the work. Now, I'm not saying that you should always, I think as the work that we do, we deserve to get paid, and we
Hey,
have to have a
right, right.
social entrepreneurial mindset in this, right?
Mhm.
Somewhere down the line, there we can get some money for this, and we can do this at a larger, on a larger
Mhm.
scale.
Mhm.
But this guy just took his talent for audio engineering, and because
And
whatever I said during the book signing, it impressed him. He says, "Joe, let's get together and do this, man." And within a week after that, I think it was like 9 days, he sent me his stuff. I wrote my stuff. I wrote the cognitive part to it. We
mhm.
put it together. It is in the editor's. The editor has it now to make sure it's good. And actually, nobody's going to see it, but I still want to have it right.
Yeah, of
And
course.
I had
Mhm.
a meeting with the Department of Juvenile Service because I've done some things with them before, and they said, "Come in and do the pilot here." And that's all I'm talking about. It
Right.
doesn't take a whole lot,
Right.
you know.
Right. All right. Well, any more questions before we end the show? We usually stop at an hour. We've just been going, but we've learned so much. We've learned so much. But I have a few pro bono cases on my caseload that I just do for some of my clients because I know they can't afford it, and so
Okay. All
yeah,
right.
I get that. But it was great. Learned so much. Please make sure you go out and get the book. I've been posting the what is it?
AMV on.
amvonlinestore.com.
So let me say this to Miss
Okay.
Johnson. Thank
Uh-huh.
you, Miss Johnson. Miss Johnson has purchased a couple books. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's my niece. Thank you,
Okay.
Khalil.
All right. Yeah. Your niece did it. She purchased a couple. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, yeah. She's a therapist too, though.
Oh no! Look, I had early on my greatest pushback were from therapists, and I was like, "Yo, I'm not saying anything about you personally. I'm just
I don't even see why you would
yeah,
push back. They should know the stuff that you said that should
mhm,
be common.
yeah, yeah. I got some pushback, but I got my helmet on. I got the full armor guard on, so
Hey.
and like I look, all most of my years are behind me, so it is what it is.
You're like, I don't care,
I don't
right?
care. You're not marginalizing my voice.
Exactly. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much for sharing your story. Make sure y'all go out to I'm gonna go get my copy too right after we get off of here because I'll use it in my therapy sessions as well. But thank you everybody for spending this Friday evening with us here on the Dr. Dare Show on Facebook and YouTube. And go enjoy the rest of your weekend. And thank you, Reginald, for sharing your knowledge with us.
And
All
look,
right.
I'm looking forward to us getting together and doing some stuff. And I meant to do it. I haven't done it. I'm going to get your book, and I want
We're
your
the
autograph in
same.
it. All right. So we're gonna
Okay.
make it happen. All right,
All
man.
right. All right.
Appreciate you, man. Love you,
All
man.
right. Love you
All right.
too. Good night,
Peace.
y'all.
All right.
Bye.